All right, today we're going to talk about non-disjunction. You need your note packet. Our question this whole time has been, how does meiosis create cells that are different from each other? We've talked about independent assortment, where the chromosomes can line up in different arrangements. We've talked about crossing over, where the chromosomes can swap pieces. And we have a third way. This is a way that we don't technically want to happen, but it happens sometimes, and it can create complications, and it's called non-disjunction. If we take a look here at this picture, notice when we have our chromosomes lined up and they pull apart for anaphase, here there's a problem. On this side, both of the sister chromatids pulled to this side, and eventually we end up with an egg or a sperm cell that has an extra chromosome, one that's missing a chromosome, and then two normal ones. Here's another example. If this happens in the first metaphase and anaphase here, when both of the homologous pairs get pulled to one side, now all of a sudden we've got 3 eggs or sperm with extra chromosome, or two eggs with an extra chromosome, and then 2 eggs that are missing a chromosome, both of which are going to be detrimental. As we can see here, we only have, 4 chromosomes that we're dealing with. And so if you can imagine 46 chromosomes, what we would end up here is we'd end up with, instead of sperm and egg with 23, we'd end up with 24. And instead of sperm and egg with 23, we'd end up with them with 22. So this is called non-disjunction. This is when chromosomes don't separate during meiosis, when they're being pulled apart, like an anaphase. And this results in sperm or egg with more or less chromosomes than normal. So pause this if you need more time to write this definition. You might be wondering, well, Ms. Frankson, why does this happen, or how often does this happen? By the way, there's a picture down here. Feel free to draw that in your notes for a drawing or a picture illustration. So how often does this happen? Can people survive with an extra chromosome? You just looked at Down syndrome, okay? And Down syndrome is one example. It's probably one of the more common examples of somebody surviving with an extra chromosome 21. What are some other examples? Let's take a look. You do not need to write these examples down. They are just for your information. So in Klinefelter's syndrome, normally people with male reproductive parts have an X and a Y chromosome, okay? In Klinefelter's, they have an X and a Y, 2 X's and a Y. The Y chromosome is what produces testosterone. So typically they present as having male anatomy from the outside. But they have some other complications. A lot of times they don't have as much muscle, facial hair, testosterone, and typically people have to take testosterone shots. I have a friend who has Klinefelter's. He looks like a totally normal guy on the outside, and he just has to take testosterone. He cannot probably have kids, but there are pretty few complications with this one. Turner syndrome. Okay, this is when we have just 1 X chromosome. So normally people with female reproductive organs or with ovaries have 2 X's. Here we're missing an X, okay? This causes developmental problems, some reproductive problems as well. Edwards syndrome is this is when you have 3 chromosome number 18. Usually people don't live super long, small weight, small head, defects in organs are all common. Patau syndrome. This is when they have 3 chromosomes number 13. Again, we've got intellectual and physical defects. A lot of individuals don't live super long as well. We have Jacobs syndrome, XYY. So again, people who normally have male reproductive parts have XY, so here they have an extra Y. So extra testosterone, which can cause problems. Weaker muscles, behavioral problems, also some language problems as well. So a reminder that this is somebody's karyotype. It is an example showing all of their chromosomes. You might be wondering, well, what about all the other chromosomes? Can I have an extra chromosome 1 or an extra chromosome 5? For a lot of these, you can't. The disorders that I just mentioned are the only ones that have people end up surviving and living. Typically, if you have an extra chromosome number 1 or number 2, what's going to happen is before that pregnancy, before that kid is born, that pregnancy is going to abort. And typically very early on, like we're talking maybe even before you know you're pregnant. So most miscarriages happen because there's some kind of genetic defect. A lot of times that's because there's not the right number of chromosomes in that actual fetus.